what I'm reading is not standard notation. All I'm reading is it just says a C, 6, just C6. I'm just reading the chords that are on top of the staff, basically. And it's not like in a guitar book where the chords are shown to you. It's just telling you what chord exists there, expecting the player to know how to play that chord or to play over that chord. That's right, yeah. And the chord has some notes that they are not compromisable. Yeah, you can't compromise about a C, the chord tones of a C triad. Like it's got to be root, third, fifth. That's all there is to it. What we can change are the notes in between the chord tones. Now, this is a little heavy for the moment, but I'll give you a quick overview, and then we could probably play with some examples. Basically, you think of it this way, okay? Now, this is a motto. Just think of this all the time. There are 3 kinds of notes. That's all there is. It's very simple that way. In fact, keep that in your mind, and let me just double check to make sure that nobody else is waiting to get in on the stream. There are 3 kinds of notes, right? I've alluded to these a little bit before. I've said them at least once here. Can anybody remember what these 3 are? I haven't explicitly said here's the 3, so it's going to take a little deduction on your part. Yeah, the one that we just talked about were chord tones. The root, third, fifth, and seventh. The seventh is optional. I'll come back to that. But the root, third, and fifth are chord tones. So that's one. What are the other 2? The other ones are scale tones, which are the notes in between the chord tones. So, I'll give you an example. 1 and 3 and 5 are chord tones. In between 1 and 3 is a 2. So a 2 is a scale tone. In between the 3 and the 5 is a 4, and the 4 is a scale tone. Okay? In between the 5 and the 7 is a 6, so a 6 is a scale tone. So there are... Now, I want to say something real quick about the 7. The 7 is an optional chord tone. What I mean is, if you look at the song, and the song says C major 7, the 7 is a chord tone. It explicitly tells you that it's a major 7 chord, and to be a major 7 chord, it has to have a major 7, meaning a 7th. And so, that 7th is a chord tone, okay? But, on the other hand, if the song just says C chord, right? If it just says C, and we know it's the 1 chord, maybe the song begins and ends, or we've played the whole thing and we can hear the difference, we know that C is the 1 chord. Suddenly, the major 7, the 7, it does not sound like a chord tone when you play it. I'll put it in context. Imagine you had a country song or a punk song. And punk is a weird example, but it fits in a way. You're not going to see a major 7 chord in a punk song on purpose, But same like if a country, if somebody's playing like, and then the guitar player plays a major 7, it's gonna be like, holy, you know what I mean? It's like, whoa. Not to say that those country guys aren't sophisticated. There's a lot of jazz and country, a lot of jazzy solos. But the point being is that 7th will not sound like a chord tone in that context. It will sound like a scale tone, meaning it's not going to sound incorrect, just like a 2 would not sound incorrect. So that's what I want to say. Think of it this way: the chord tones are root, third, and fifth. All right, the scale tones fit right in between. They are the 2, the 4, and the 6th. All right, now the 7th can go either way. It just depends on the chord that you're playing over, okay? Not necessarily. It's just contextual. Like, if it doesn't say major 7, but it is a 1 chord or a 4 chord, you can still play it. It will sound like a scale tone, meaning it will sound farther removed from the chord itself. Think of it this way. You might not want to, depending on your audience or the effect you're trying to achieve. Here's the way you can think of it. Chord tones are like your home. Okay? That's where you wake up in the morning. That's where you usually end up at night, but not always. It's very safe and very comfortable. Now, it also can be very boring if you never left your house. What 2, 4, and 6 are like friends of yours, okay, in the neighborhood. But they're not all equal. These friends. Some of them you like better. Some of them you can hang out with longer. Some of them you might like just fine, but they cannot occupy the same space. Meaning you could easily become roommates with your best friend, the 2, on a major chord. You could be okay roommates with your with the 6. Maybe if you let's say you are a major chord person, if your friend is a 2, you could share a studio apartment and have like bunks and be cool with that because you're tight friends. But if your friend is a 6, you might want to have a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay? Now, if your friend is a 4, it's a friend that you're going to want to like be friends with. You're friends with a 4 legitimately, but you're probably not going to want to live with that friend, and you know that. Okay? Now, here's the science to back up the metaphor. What I'm saying is the 2 has a whole step in between the root and the 2, and there's a whole step between the 2 and the 3. Meaning, within those intervals, there's space. They have room, okay? Now, between the 5th and the 6th, there's a whole step. And between the 6th and the major 7, there's a whole step. So it's fairly well comfortable also. However, between the 3 and the 4, it's a half step. It's just 3 to 4. There's no 3 sharp. There's no such thing. There's no flat 4. There's no such thing. It's 3rd, 4th. You know what I mean? Now, if you play these simultaneously, and whether or not you play it simultaneously, if you play the 3rd and a guitar player plays the 4, it's like, tense, because they're so close. You get this kind of sound. Like, that won't be... you get it basically like... That's what's going to happen. But that 4 is still a good note. It doesn't mean you shouldn't play it. It just might mean instead of playing this, you might want to play, from the 4 to the 3. Or, yeah, you hang out, but don't live with it. It can be, however, the big difference is with the major 7 chord between the 7 and the root, if the chord is a major 7, like, let's say this. That's, let me do a better example. There we go. Now, when you hear this chord, I'll play C major 7. It sounds pretty, but you wouldn't say it is lacking tension either, right? I mean, it sounds somewhat tense. Especially when you hear these. If I were to put this in a different octave, you're hearing this. That is what you're actually hearing. Except they're separated by an octave, so they get a little bit more space. But it's very tense. Now imagine if you just played a C down here, and a guitar player plays like way up on his highest 3 strings, he plays, major 7 stuff. It's like they're so far removed that it's kind of like you share a mansion, and you rarely see each other. But you do still have that conflicting personality. You see what I'm saying? So that C major 7 is somewhat tense, but it sounds pretty, and it manages. It's almost like a relationship, maybe with with a woman where maybe you've seen a friend or something who has a girlfriend, and they kind of like bicker, but somehow or another it still works. Yeah, it's like that. That's your major 7 chord. Cool. Okay. So yeah, so now on to scale tones. If you were going to, there's a third kind of note we haven't talked about, right? There's chord tones, scale tones, and then the other kind. Well, before we talk about the other kind,